So get this. My mom was cheated on by my father. He ran away with his mistress, and all these years later, here he comes, groveling back to our feet. But there's so much more to this story, because we find out, he doesn't just have one mistress, he has many. I've read a bunch of stories on here about less than healthy families, and I thought that I would add mine, considering everything that's been going on lately. This is going to be a long one, so I hope you're ready for a bunch of background before I get into the real meat of it. It's important, I promise, and my dad's a jerk. He has spent the last few days leveling up his jerkery in ways never before seen. About 1.5 years ago, but closer to 2 years now, my mother caught my father cheating. It wasn't the first time he had crossed a line in the marriage, but hey, it was the first time that she had physically caught him doing it. Now, if the first thing to cross your mind is a judgment towards my mother for staying through everything else that he's done, which I'll get to in a second, know that she did not stay for him. See, my parents had an arranged marriage. They'd known each other for years beforehand, but it wasn't for their fathers. It was unlikely that anything would have ever happened between them. My maternal and paternal grandfathers have been best friends for what I'm told was basically their whole life. They went to school together as boys and remained in similar lines of work as adults, eventually starting a company together. When my maternal grandfather got sick, he asked my paternal grandfather to make sure that my mother and her brother would be taken care of. Apparently, the easiest way to do this was to get her and my father married. All of this obviously happened before I was born, so I can't really speak to the reasoning behind any of their decisions. Well, my mother studied medicine instead of going into the family business, and my dad never had any interest in anything as far as I could tell. So my uncle, my mother's brother, ended up taking over the company that my grandparents started. Seeing as I'm the only child in the family, I've been groomed to eventually take over, and I'm currently getting my degree in a relevant field. Okay, back to the point though. Seeing as my maternal grandfather passed away when my mother was quite young, she grew up very close to my paternal grandfather, who she essentially saw as a second father. The love definitely went both ways, and my grandpa treated my mom like a daughter. Seeing as my father was less than the ideal son, my mom ended up being closer to his father than he was. Then when I was born, Grandpa was more involved in my life than Dad was, so we definitely grew close. When my dad cheated on my mother, her first instinct was to go to my grandpa and ask for a divorce. The thing is, Grandpa was already on a steady decline from his heart condition and the general complications that come with being as old as he was. And telling him that his son had messed up yet again could have just been the thing that, sent him over the pearly edge. It wasn't a chance that my mom was willing to take, and so she said nothing. Don't get me wrong. My mom is not a pushover by any measure of the word. My dad knew that she knew, and he didn't dare show his face in our home for so long after that. Whether that was out of fear of my mom or his own selfish desire to spend as much time as he could with his, mistress, is something I've never bothered with. Of course, when I said that Dad was a jerk, I wasn't exaggerating. Shortly after the whole cheating debacle, my father realized that Grandpa really was on a decline. Instead of stepping up like a good son, he decided that it's his chance to milk his father for all that he's worth. To put it lightly, Grandpa's business was a successful one. Dad was never interested in running it, but he had always been very interested in spending the money that it brought in. Instead of taking up a place in the family business, he spent his days spending Grandpa's money and just funding meaningless startups to fuel his delusions that he could be more successful than his father. He was a real sucker, for those get-rich-quick schemes in whatever form they come in. I think the fact that he just bought a bunch of Dogecoin should tell you all you need to know. So when my dad realized that Grandpa was in a vulnerable position, thanks to his health and desire to keep his family close to him, he decided to ask for money to fund the latest in his laundry list of failed startups. Shockingly, my grandpa said no. My mom and I would not find out about this for a while, considering my father still did transfer a cool $100,000 to himself following his meeting with Grandpa. Then, after he transferred that money, my dad disappeared. Out of nowhere, he just picked up and left. Sometime later, we found out through social media posting that he had run away with his mistress. Considering what he had done, my mom had no choice but to tell my grandfather about him leaving and the cheating that preceded it. My grandfather was so mad, and when he was able to, he changed his will and his life insurance to list myself and my mother as the only beneficiaries. My uncle was left out intentionally, seeing as he had taken over the business a while ago and just received the lion's share of the inheritance from his own father. It was something that had been discussed prior and caused no issues. Seeing as my father wasn't around to be aware of the changes, everything went ahead smoothly. That brings us up to about 7 months after Dad left. I'd say about a year ago now. Grandpa passed away. As stated above, my mother and I received the majority of his assets and were the sole beneficiaries of his life insurance. My mother and uncle planned the funeral without any input from my dad. While my mother did not attempt to contact my father in any way, which I don't blame her for, my uncle did reach out to inform him of Grandpa's passing as a courtesy. The thing is, my dad knew that my grandfather wasn't exactly doing well. When he took off with his mistress, he knew that Grandpa wasn't exactly making a miracle recovery anytime soon. Grandpa had all his affairs in order, and he knew that he did not have time left, so he made sure that all of us were well aware of it, and Dad made the conscious decision to stay away, and hey, that's on him. He didn't even bother acknowledging my uncle's messages. There was no love lost when he did not attend the funeral. Some guests did ask about his absence, but by and large, everyone was familiar with the type of son my father had been. He wasn't there for the service, he wasn't there when we cleaned up Grandpa's room, and he wasn't there when the house title was put into my mother's name. We didn't hear from him at all in all the months following Grandpa's passing. None of us even tried to reach out either. My emotions regarding my father aren't particularly important due to this post, so I'm not going to get into it. But just know that I would not have received any attempts at communication very well anyways. Life went on. We grieved, we moved on, and well, last week, out of the blue, he showed up at our front door and he was alone with no signs of the woman that he had left us for to be found, and he was very, very apologetic. He said that he's heard about Grandpa's passing and the sheer grief of it all made him realize that he valued his family above anything else. He said he's sorry for everything that he's done and that he's ready to be the person we deserve now. He wants to get back together with my mom. He wants to be the father that he failed to be, and well, part of me wants to pretend that he's being genuine and that we can all just be a happy family. A large part of me knows that it's more likely that he's got an ulterior motive. I don't quite know what it is yet, but odds are it had something to do with money. I don't know why he would wait this long after Grandpa's death to try to, do something if it's related to money though, but I would not put him past it. My mom told him that they would talk when she had just gotten home from work, and he said that he was staying in a hotel nearby and he's willing to drive to the house whenever she's ready to talk. I don't know what she plans to say to him, and I don't even know how to feel about, him being back. Mostly, I'm writing this just to get some outside opinions. I know every other person on this site has a family just as, if not more complicated than mine, so I'm hoping that somebody with a similar experience would be able to shed some light on this. I don't know. Anything would help. Top comments from the original post. Comment number 1 states this: I wouldn't trust your father as far as you could throw him. Everything that you described above had me thinking about my father. He was a complete deadbeat who only stayed with my mom because she had a good job and she was willing to put up with the useless self-loafing around the house, and he contributed nothing to our lives. I'll never understand why she didn't just leave him, but it seems like your mother actually had a reason to stay with your dad. I'd call him leaving the trash taking itself out if he had not come back. My gut's telling me that he's probably run out of money and realized that he did not get anything from good old Dad, so he's come to tap a new tree. I'd be careful about letting him back into your life. I don't know what your relationship with him is, but regardless of it, you should be careful. Comment number 2. Honestly, I feel like you've gone out of the way to frame your mother as the good person in this situation, but it kind of leaks out that all this is not as it seems. First of all, the company belonged to both of your grandfathers, but only your uncle took over. They just overlook your father completely. It kind of sounds like after your maternal grandfather's death, your mother and uncle just stole all the paternal grandfather's attention and turned him against his own son. From what you say, you're taking over anyways, so you don't really have any skin in the game, and can't really say whether the arrangement's fair. I don't want to clarify that I don't think cheating is acceptable, but if your mother and uncle really have been pushing your father out of this family for what looks like years, yeah, it might be understandable. Update number 1. Hey, I thought I'd actually update this post given it got a bit more attention than I expected it to when I first posted it. Firstly, I want to thank everyone who chose to comment constructive criticism below my initial post. I know it was super rambly, and I probably could have cut down on the amount of background, but I'm really grateful to those who chose to read it, and just leave me some advice. To clarify a few things, I'm 21, female, I'm an only child, and neither my uncle nor my father have any other children as far as I'm aware. I saw a comment suggesting that my father was overlooked as an heir to the company when my uncle took over, and that I'm in no place to judge since I did not miss out on anything anyways. Well, to address the first point, my father never had any interest in the company. I briefly mentioned it in my original post, but maybe it was lost in the wall of text. But my dad has always been more interested in spending money than making it. My grandpa funded his lifestyle for most of his life and even funded all of my dad's business ventures. Each time he got convinced that he had the next great idea, my uncle took over the company because no one else wanted to. My mother wanted to be a doctor instead, so that really only left her brother to run everything once Grandpa retired. The reason my uncle did not get anything when Grandpa passed away was because everything on the business front was already in his name, and he'd gotten the property from my mom's side of the family back when his dad passed. It really was a fair deal, and everyone involved knows that. Now on to the actual update. My father has continued to come around the house to quote reconcile. My mom's been allowing it thus far, but I also know that she's been in contact with our family lawyers. Considering I spend most of my time on campus, I'm not super involved in anything that's been going on, but from what I know, my mother's been keeping my dad's interactions with me to a minimum, until she gets a better read on his intentions. I just want to assure everyone who is worried that my mother's a very intelligent woman. She may not be the brains behind the business, but she's got a good head on her shoulders, and she's not going to be manipulated by a few long overdue apologies and a bouquet of flowers. My dad may have been a less than stellar parent, but my mother has always been on top of things. She's looking into everything, and I trust her to make the right decision for our family. There aren't really any more monumental updates as of yet, but I'll be sure to update this post when I find the time. I won't leave you guys hanging, don't you worry. Update number 2. While the last update may have been lacking in actual update material, I've come back to wish you a bit of a doozy today. Those of you who've been weary of my father's intentions from the moment he showed up at my door will be happy to know that your worries were warranted. To put it simple, Dad is still a jerk. I mentioned at the end of my previous update that Mom was looking into everything. I meant that in the most literal sense possible. Though I did not know the exact details at the time, I knew that she'd engaged the services of a private investigator to look into my father. We didn't know anything about what he'd been up to for the last year, so I'd say that her skepticism was absolutely justified. Before I get into what exactly we found out from the PI, there have been some other developments that I'd like to inform you of first. As you know, my father's been big on the, quote, bringing the family back together. You know, those vibes ever since he returned. Of course, that involves him getting back together with my mom. As you can probably imagine, my mom wasn't really jumping at the opportunity to get back together. Despite my father's best efforts to win her favor through expensive lunches, bouquets of her favorite flowers, she wasn't really open to the idea of rekindling their relationship. I mean, can you blame her? He cheated, ran away with his mistress, and did not even attend his own father's funeral. I've broken up with boyfriends for much less than that. Anyways, once she gleaned enough information from him as she could, she let him know that there was about a 0% chance of absolutely anything ever happening between them again. Now, a sensible person would have accepted defeat and left again to wherever he crawled out of. Someone who genuinely meant what he said about being a better father would have respectfully backed off and instead worked to rebuild his relationship with me. You've probably guessed by now that my father did neither. From what I've been told, he went absolutely ballistic. He starts yelling at my mom about how she had stolen his birthright, manipulated his father, and how he'd be suing not only her but me for tampering with the will because he'd seen it before and he knew that he was entitled to something. My mother informed him that he's been written out of the will after his little $100,000 disappearing act. But he wasn't willing to listen. He left the house in a big fit and told my mother to watch out because, and I quote, he had the best lawyers on the payroll. What can I conclude from all that is that he was definitely only back for money. I think I already knew that deep down, but part of me had kind of been hoping that he was being genuine. On that note, there's actually more to this update than my dad's temper tantrum. The private investigator that my mom hired, which may be doubly useful, now given the impending lawsuit, managed to discover some unsurprising information about my pops. Firstly, he's very much still seeing his mistress. She's living with what looks like her parents right now, but they meet up all the time for dinner, and, well, they go back to his hotel room. Secondly, he isn't just seeing his mistress. Enter Mistress 2! Yeah. For the sake of not confusing myself while typing this, I'll be referring to Mistress number 2 as MT, and Mistress 1 as MO. It would seem that MO is completely unaware of the existence of MT, which is both tragic and kind of funny. I can't help but think that this is karma for getting with a married man and forgetting the simple, well, thing that says, once a cheater, always a cheater. I don't quite know what we're going to do with this information just yet, but as they say, knowledge is power. And the more we know about my father, if he actually decides to contest the will, the better. Update number 3. Hello, loyal readers. I know there's probably like 2 of you, but still. I've come to you today with yet another offer. By that, I mean I have another update in the saga of the jerkery father. When we left off, we discovered that he was not only disingenuous in his efforts to get back with my mom, but that he was cheating on his mistress too. A truly unsurprising revelation to the cynical member of the comment section. Oh, he also threatened to sue my mother and me for, and I quote, tampering with the will. So update 1, he's actually suing us. He's technically just contesting the will, but he's also raising civil charges against both me and my mother for manipulating my elderly grandfather while he was in a, quote, very vulnerable position and alienating my father from him. Update 2, we'd countersue him. In the interest of maintaining some privacy and the lead up to the case and protecting any relevant information, he somehow came across this post. I won't be including any details regarding our case right now, but know that our lawyers don't think that it'll be much of a struggle for any reasonable judge to see our point of view. Maybe once everything's sorted out, I'll give you guys a little more information, but don't worry. I'll still be including enough for you to get the gist of it regardless. What can I say is that it's come to our attention that my father never officially married M.O., Mistress 1, just in case you forgot, due to the small detail of still being married to Mom. However, our private investigator has told us that M.O. wears both an engagement ring and a wedding band, and that she has her name listed on her social media accounts with my father's last name. I don't really know if M.O. knows about what my dad has been up to, considering they're not currently living together. But it's been suggested that she's in on the plan for him to get money from them and then run away again. What we're quite certain is she doesn't know is that my dad is cheating on her. From what our PI has gathered, my father seems to mainly meet up with M.O. at night for the occasional dinner and hotel visit. During the day, however, my dad's been gallivanting around town with Mistress too. M.O.'s family lives clearly on the other side of town, so that may be why my father's willing to parade M.T. around without any shame. In any case, it's quite clear that M.O. is unaware of the existence of M.T. I personally wonder how she would react to finding out that the man who cheated on her is now cheating on her. In any case, M.O. remains a person of interest in this whole situation, solely due to the fact that she may have been complicit in my father taking the $100,000 from Grandpa back before he ran away. If the details have escaped you, I mentioned back in my original post that my dad asked Grandpa for $100,000. Grandpa said no. However, my mother and I only found out about the denial much later from Grandpa himself, because my dad somehow went ahead with the withdrawal of the funds anyways. The acting theory here is that he forged Grandpa's signature on whatever documents were involved in the transfer process. It's highly likely that even if M.O. wasn't directly involved in it, she has more information than we do. Information that may just come in handy in court. Update number 4. Hey guys, it's me again, and yes, it's been a while, but I've waited to update you for a good reason. A lot's happened since the last time I posted, and I didn't really want to post again until a few things were finalized, and I could comfortably speak about things publicly without causing any issue for our case. Okay, important update time. First, update 1. My mom and dad are now officially divorced. My dad, if you can believe the audacity, actually tried to go for alimony. He was denied, of course, especially when it was brought up that my mother had taken time off work to look after my grandfather after my father had been unwilling to do so himself or hire any help. My mother did not even try to push for alimony, seeing as her income level far exceeds his. But she did push for him to pay back what he stole from Grandpa to the estate. Officially, he's going to be required. And even though it's unlikely that he's ever actually going to be able to come up with $100,000 by himself, well, he has to. Anyways, update 2. And perhaps the update I've been most eager to post about, we absolutely obliterated him in court. Not only was his case in shambles from the get-go, considering he would never be able to prove that my mother and I manipulated Grandpa, but the rewriting of the will? Well, you know what that is. It's been done completely by the book. He didn't have a leg to stand on. That, and suing his daughter that he walked out on, was never going to look good to a judge. As I mentioned previously, we also countersued him for the money that he stole from Grandfather. I already told you that he'll have to pay it back, but it's how it all played out in court that really matters. Following the revelation that he was cheating on M.O. with M.T., my mother reached out to M.O. through her lawyers to inform her of his actions and to potentially get her to testify against him if she had any relevant information. Guys, not only had she been a witness to my dad stealing money from Grandpa, but she also had the receipts. She brought us photocopies of the documents that my father used to authorize the transfer of the funds to his account. Documents that featured my grandfather's funeral that had been forged by my father. She was informed that if my father had managed to get any money out of my mother, either through the will or the lawsuit, he would probably have used it to run away with MT, just as he has done with her original, in return for not pressing any charges against her, and a portion of the inheritance that my father promised her when they returned here. M.O. was more than willing to testify against him in court. After being unable to contest the will, my dad entered a plea deal that allowed him to shave off a majority of the sentence he would have served for stealing $100,000. I don't know how much I can actually say about this exact sentence, but he's going to be serving time in addition to having to return the amount he took from the estate. All in all, jerk father got his desserts. And my mother and I are now free to live our lives far, far away from him. Before I end this post, I'd like to thank everybody who actually stuck around long enough to read it. Especially those who took the time to give me some advice. It sucks to know that so many people have to deal with their fathers wreaking havoc on their lives. But it's also super vindicating that so many of them have faced their comeuppance. It's safe to say that I'm not going to lose any sleep over the verdict. In the words of my mother, good riddance. Final update. Hello, it's been even longer since my last update, and I absolutely intended for that one to be my final update, but it's the holidays and I was reminiscing and this came to my mind, so here I am. I don't actually have much to say in ways of a real update, but I suppose I can give you a bit of a where are they now thing. Predictably, my father's in prison. I don't have much more to say on that beyond the fact that I'm happy that he's out of here. I have not visited him, I haven't called him, I haven't sent him a letter. My feelings are still a bit jumbled, but above all else, I'm glad that he can't mess with my mom anymore. On this subject of my mom, she's doing amazing. Not only is thriving at her work, but she's actually begun seeing someone. It's a bit weird to write about my mother's love life on the interwebs, but know that she's happy. So I'm happy. It's all still very new, but from what it looks like, it's going well. MO and MT are fine, I'm sure. I haven't heard anything about them since everything was wrapped up, and I don't care to. MO got what we promised her, and even though it's not even a portion of what my dad must have told her she'd be getting when they were together, it's really as good as it's going to get for her. She should just be happy that we did not bring up any charges against her for being an accomplice in the forgery. But alas, that was the deal. I don't know what MT is up to, and I said, I really don't care. I've mainly been focusing on school and my upcoming internship. My uncle suggested interning with the business, but my mother advised me that it would be good for me to branch out, get a bit of experience before settling down there, and you know what? I agree. I'm excited to move on to this new portion of my life, and that's really it as far as this update goes. So I'll end the post on this note. Thank you, everybody. I think it's actually hilarious that one of the mistresses would roll over and basically turn against her lover just for a bit of the inheritance money. I want to know what you guys think of this story. How despicable of a person was this guy? I do want to know your thoughts about it. So go ahead and drop your comments down below, and, well, it just seems like the father, he was, destined to end up where he did. Guys, my name's Mr. Reddito, and I narrate these sort of dramas every day. So if you want to be a part of these animated stories, all you gotta do is subscribe. I'll see you guys tomorrow, and hey, just remember, it's a cold world out there, so it's cool to be kind. See ya.